Welcome to Spaces Between, a podcast about bringing gamers closer together. I'm your host, Roy Candy, and today I have a very special guest with me, Marty Connell of Rolling Dice and Taking Names. What's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? So you said this was a podcast, then why is there a camera on me right now?
Because we do audio and video. This is the newfangled technology of doing, like, video podcasts. I don't know, I've always done video podcasts, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll buy that because our podcast is just audio only, and if you see by this face, you'll understand why. That's why we have voices for radio. Let's put it that way.
I think it's hilarious because when I first started talking to Tom Bassel,
I said like voices. I mean faces for radio. I just ruined that joke. Never mind. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One of the very first emails I ever sent to Tom was like, "Hey, I have this podcast called Epic Gaming Night, and we record it live, and we do it like on YouTube and like on Twitch and things like that." And he's like, "Why would you ever do like content live? That's dumb." Now I work for the man running his live content, so it's kind of funny.
Good experience.
Awesome, man. But yeah, you and Tony both do a podcast called Rolling Dice and Taking Names, where you do all sorts of different topics and things and talk about a bunch of different games. So tell people a little bit about the podcast that you do.
Sure. So we've been around since 2012. So this coming December will be our 8th year, and we focused on board games. That was kind of the original intent. The original intent actually was to try to provide a podcast for those who are just getting into board games. Mm-hmm. And if I was to go back and start a show again, I would do everything 180 degrees out of what we did. We made so many mistakes early on. One was, why would anybody who's wanting to find a board game podcast go listen to it if they know nothing about board games? It's like the audience was just like wrong. If we did like a podcast on automobiles and had a segment on board games, that would make more sense because then it's like, hey, you came here for the cars, but let me tell you about the board games. Nobody who doesn't have interest in board games will probably go listen to a podcast about it. So
I thought your podcast was about lawnmowers, though.
Well, see, that's where I'm getting to. So over the years that we found out, you know what? There are a lot more educated and intelligent people that are reviewing board games. So while the central focus of the show is still board games, you know, there's just day-to-day things that we go through that we want to talk about that everybody else has to go through too. You know, things like mowing the yard, animals out in the yard like squirrels, pets. So we ended up on this thing of where we just talked about our day-to-day lives, and that seems to be where people connected because it's like, well, I haven't played that board game you're talking about, but I do have this mower that needs to be replaced over here, or or whatever you guys just talked about going to the supermarket and dealing with something. I dealt with that too. So over the years, we've kind of become just try to be a podcast that just people can just sit down with us and enjoy. And from the very beginning, we always said we wanted to be like it was a conversation between us, but other people were at the table, and the other people was the audience. So we always wanted to make them feel like they're a part of a conversation with us. So that's always been our intent from day one. That part I think we did have right.
One of the things I've always loved about you guys' show is that there's so much banter and stuff in between you guys. And you can tell because you and Tony have been friends for like forever. And you can kind of tell like the camaraderie and back and forth and jabs at each other there, which is really fun.
30 years we've been friends. So yeah, there's a lot of history there to create the banter that we have. So yeah. We and it was funny when we first started the show, it's like, what are we going to talk about? And we always used to sit around after a board game night and just talk and stuff. I said, just what we're doing here. We're just playing a game and then we're talking about it. Let's start a show about that. It's almost like Seinfeld. It's like it's a show about nothing. But that's kind of how it started being. Except again, the whole idea was we wanted the audience to feel like they were part of our group, and we kind of just sitting around the table after a board game and just chit chatting.
Another thing that I think is really cool about you guys' online persona and like Roller Dice Taking Names is that you lean hard into like the memes that come out of your content. You're like, all right, we're going to do this whole strike gladiators dice in a bowl thing, or the whole Star Wars Rebellion thing, ragging Rodney constantly. It's just interesting to see like you find a meme and you run with it forever.
And some people may say you're running it into the ground and please stop.
Never. Don't.
Especially with the Star Wars Rebellion thing. if in case anybody missed. So for those who don't know the history, this went like, 4 years ago. Star Wars Rebellion came out. I asked Rodney if there's going to be a video. He said he didn't think there was. So I drew a picture of his logo stuck on the side of a Star Wars Rebellion box. And it's like, well, your logo's here. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then it became this thing where people are like, where's the Star Wars Rebellion video? And then the next year when he did his crowdfunding, I think he used Indiegogo at the time. I got together a bunch of people and we put together this video of like, hey, if we can help Rodney reach $100,000, then he'll commit to doing a video for us. And so it's funny. I fed it enough to where people just kept feeding it on their own. And shoot, today on Twitter, somebody had posted a meme of Rodney. One thing that we pick on him too, and I'm going to claim this because this has become a meme too, is Tony noticed that at the end of all of his episodes, Rodney would say, hey, like there's also rules for the solo game.
Oh yeah.
But we'll leave that to discover on your own. And that's a line that he uses a lot. And now I saw a meme today where somebody said, hey, this game has solo mode, but Rodney said he'll leave it to discover us on his own. Then somebody put down there, well, unless it's Star Wars Rebellion. So, see, it's not even me that's perpetuating this now. It's just the audience or the community in general.
That's kind of how like a meme like starts, is like it becomes like an inside joke, and then it just spreads and spreads and spreads until probably there are people talking about like, oh yeah, Rodney, Star Wars Rebellion, that maybe have never even listened to Rolling Dice Taking Names. And does that make you proud on the inside?
It does a little. Now, Rodney did have a big response for us. I don't know if anybody saw it, but on April 1st, April Fool's Day, Rodney he said, I'm going to do a Star Wars Rebellion rules video. And the gag is that
watch it read.
Yes. He read the rule book from cover to cover and said, there, I've now taught you the rules. And so I did a live reaction video to it. Just having fun with it. But so what happens after it was over, I said, Rodney, I had to do a live reaction video because I've got to leave that door open just a little bit. I couldn't let you slam it all the way. And he's like, I know you had to do that. So who knows where it'll go. It may die down for a little bit because he did that. But yes, we tend to find these things that people tend to gravitate to. You said the strike tournament. That's funny. That actually came from Rodney too. I guess all my inspiration comes from Rodney. I guess I should owe him a lot. But he introduced Strike to people, and Tony fell in love with it. And then we reviewed it on our show, and it's like, I don't see what the big deal is. It's just dice in a bowl. And Tony's like, no, you got to get into the theme of it, man. Those dice are gladiators, and you're in an arena and you're fighting each other. So then the community split into two groups, dice in a bowl or gladiators in an arena, which we said, okay, let's decide this once and for all. So three years ago at Gen Con, almost 4 years ago at Gen Con, we had our first strike tournament where we get people to come in and it's like, all right, you're going to be either on the dice in a bowl side or gladiators in an arena side, and we're going to do a tournament. We're going to single elimination tournament to where we have two champions at the end. One side for dice in a bowl, one side for gladiators in an arena. Whoever wins, that means that's what it will be called for the next year. So if gladiators in arena won, then I had to call it gladiators in arena for another year. We've done 3 of those tournaments. Dice in a bowl has yet to win, and I will not stop this tournament until Dice in a bowl finally wins at least one of these. So.
That's awesome. Actually, Tony taught me how to play Strike for the first time because, of course, this was back when he was evangelizing the game to everybody. So, And
it's really cool that Ravensburger is coming out with a brand new version of it.
Does it have miniatures like gladiator miniatures, or is
if you call dice miniatures? But what's cool is so we've planned to do this event again at Gen Con, assuming Gen Con happens. And behind the scenes, we're in talks with Ravensburger, whichever one it is, to kind of sponsor it.
That's awesome.
Since the new version of Strike will be released, so we want them to be a part of that event. And in fact, it was really cool last year at our event. Some people from Ravensburger came and saw what was going on, and they couldn't believe it. They said, this game's like 9 years old. What are you people doing? There's over 100 people here playing this game. And they just realized, wow, there's still a market for this thing.
You're so like, listen, the power of memes. You have to meme it.
So they went back and they said, let's bring it back out. Now, they are going to retheme some of it. So there's going to be a Harry Potter strike. Which has a Harry Potter theme to it. And I believe that's going to be in big box stores like Target.
That'll be strange seeing that like the theme was so tied to the mechanics of the game. It'd be hard to see it as something else, you know?
I know, but they wanted to do that because in a Target store, people's going to pick up something that says, you know, Harry Potter as opposed to just Strike. But they are going to come out with the plain version too called Strike also, which I was surprised at. I didn't realize they were doing that. So that'll be the one. I'll be curious to see if on the box anywhere it says Gladiators in an Arena. I want to see if they're going to keep that theme. But the thing is that they are going back to the big bowl
cool.
Because they came out with the version called Element.
Yeah, something like that.
But the box was only like that big. It was really small and the dice were tiny. It just wasn't the same effect. So they said, fine, we're going to go back to the full-size box with the bigger dice.
The reason that game's exciting is that one point when it's like you have a couple dice left, but then the next person has a ton, and then you empty the bowl out, and then that next person has to roll all of their dice in and can end up losing tons of them. And the fact that like somebody who's like almost out can swing the game back into their favor is kind of why Strike is exciting.
It is, and I'll give them credit for such a simple game. It's a fun game. It's you know, the rules are super easy to teach. It's like just throw in the die, and I'll tell you what happens if they match. If they match, you take them out and it goes to the next person and you have no more dice in your hand. It's so easy to learn. I've taught my family the game, and it plays in 5-10 minutes and it's done. So it is a solid little party game.
So another thing that I thought was super interesting about you guys is that you've played like almost every trading card game. Like you've played tons of trading card games, living card games, and you have like a long history with like those style of games.
I do. We got into the hobby because of a trading card game. We got in because of the Lord of the Rings TCG, Lord of the Rings trading card.
I think that game's underrated and enough people don't know about it.
Yes, which is why I'm excited. Quick squirrel moment here. The designers or some of the designers or developers of the Lord of the Rings TCG is working on the Vampire the Masquerade card game that's coming out from Renegade Games.
Cool. I didn't realize that connection there.
So Scott Gata used to work with Decipher, who made the Star Wars CCG and also the Lord of the Rings CCG. And I said, dude, I would love to see something like that again. So last year at Origins, he said, well, guess what? He said, I've got the team back together, and they're going to work on Vampire the Masquerade. I said, oh, that's exciting. I can't wait to see what they do. So anyway, so I'm looking forward to see how that's going to come to be. So, yeah, so we got started in the Lord of the Rings card game, and we were heart and heavy into it. And that's the only thing that we played for a long time. In fact, I'd never been to a game store until my brother-in-law, who was into the game. This was 2001, right when the first movie came out, Fellowship.
Oh, yeah.
He was into it, and I went with him, and I was like, I was very confused. What's so bizarre to me is somehow I missed Magic altogether, which would have been right up our alley, but we just never got into it. I knew of the game, but I didn't know how it worked.
Did you get into this because of the movies or because liking Lord of the Rings?
It was because my brother-in-law was into it, and he taught me the game, and I thought, this is kind of cool. And so then he taught me the concept of a collectible card game and how it works. And then so I got a starter box, and I said, Tony, man, you need to try this. So he went out and bought a starter box, and then for like the next 3 years, because a major set came out every year after that because of the movies, and they want to keep up with. And there was a major set, then two smaller sets that came up after it. But we were buying boxes and trading and everything, totally into it. And I just loved it. I just loved the concept of opening packs and just like in the Magic thing, opening packs, getting rares, building decks and everything like that. I traded a lot online. There was an online trading site called Mahatma. Yeah, Mahatma. And it was this was before eBay. Well, was this before eBay? So it started in 2001. Maybe eBay wasn't big yet. But there was online places where you can like list a card.
Oh, gotcha.
And you had wants and trades, and then you would offer and said, hey, I'll trade you this for this. And basically it was just a site to connect people together to do the trades. And I was trading with people from over in France and England and all over the US. So there was this really cool community there that I just really, really enjoyed and went to local tournaments and stuff. So from Lord of the Rings, it just kept every time a new CCG came out, it seemed that we tried it.
Did you have a specific faction you played in the Lord of the Rings game?
My favorite was probably the Rohan when it came out for Two Towers, because I love the idea of the mounts.
I was all about dwarves back in the day.
Yeah, those
because they had tons of equipment.
Yeah, I liked playing on the Fellowship side. I liked playing the Riders of Rohan, and on the Shadow side, I liked the Uruk-hai.
I played Uruk-hai on the bad guy side too. That's awesome. Yep. That game was interesting because there are a lot of CCGs that feel like Magic. Like that Lord of the Rings CCG did not feel like, it was not a copy of Magic at all. It had this whole pressure luck mechanic of racing through the sites, and the way the economy worked for playing good cards, putting stuff in the Twilight Pool, and then pulling stuff out was just so different.
And nobody's done that since then. And Tony and I have talked about this on the show many times. And to explain what we're talking about, so when the Fellowship so what was cool was you played both sides. When it was your turn, you were playing as the Fellowship.
Right.
And when it was the other person's turn, you were playing as the Shadow. And all your cards were mixed into one deck. So you had half Shadow cards, half Fellowship cards. And so on the Fellowship side, there was a cost to the card, and you could play as many cards as you want, but whatever the card cost, you put a token and put it in the middle of the table to say, okay, this cost me 3, this cost me 4. That pool that was set out there was then given to the Shadow side, and that's how many resources they had to play cards during their turn. So did you want to get out all your good stuff but then give them a chance to respond, or did you want to starve the Shadow and hardly give them any resources to use? It was such an amazing mechanic, and the closest thing I've seen to that was Crystal Clans that came out from
Plaid Hat.
Plaid Hat, thank you. Where they had the concept of, I'm going to pay cards, you got that mark, that tracker on the one side. Right. And when it went over to the other person's side, well, that's how many resources they had to go back your way, and it was kind of a tug-of-war thing with that resource marker. That's the closest thing I've seen to it. And when Renegade said this was coming out, I said, please tell me somehow that mechanic is going to be in the game. He said, it's not. He said, they're kind of making it like the original Vampire game. Gotcha. He said, that's not in there. But I said, it's so simple. It's so simple, and I'm sure there's other games out there that's done it, but I just can't think of any off the top of my head that are very popular.
I also love that in the game, at the beginning of the game, there wouldn't be a whole lot of Twilight out there because you're just building up your stuff. But as the game progressed, it would go up higher because the number of people you had out on the board. Also, the sites, it would just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So at the end of the game, your opponent's just throwing down Balrogs and Nazgul and all sorts of giant things at you, and you're just live, Frodo, live! It just right to the very last second. It just felt tense in a game that didn't deserve to be as good as it was. It's holy smokes, this Lord of the Rings IP game is solid. It was just kind of crazy.
And you mentioned the sites. The sites were so cool. I think there were 9 sites, and the goal was to start from site 1 and progress all the way through. And like you said, everywhere along the way, the Shadow gets more powerful till that last site. If the Fellowship can get through the last site, they win the game. So it wasn't about necessarily wiping out the other person's board. Well, I guess you could win that way if you wiped out their Fellowship and stuff. But there are multiple ways to win from the Fellowship side. And I had read that this was considered a second-generation CCG because it was so different than Magic that they introduced these new concepts that had never been seen before.
Oh, for sure.
Typically everybody was copying Magic with, I'm going to play a monster, you play a monster, we attack each other and move on. And then they came out the Lord of the Rings, and that kind of sprung a whole second generation of CCGs. Another one we got into heavily was the WoW, World of Warcraft TCG. What was so unique about it was every card could be used as mana. When you play Magic, you have that what they call the mana screw, right? It's I can't get any mana into my hand to play to get the cards out.
Yeah.
The World of Warcraft CCG fixed that. They said any card can be mana. Just on your turn, you could put down one card and make it a mana. And now, of course, if that sounds familiar, because that's what Hearthstone became to be. Hearthstone's the same concept. At the beginning of every turn, you get one resource to use. In the card game, you actually had to pay a card, put it face down in front of you, and that became your mana. You didn't have to, but it was a choice that you had to either play one or not. So that was considered the second generation, where you didn't have to have cards that gave you resources. Anything could be a resource.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's crazy how many of these like old CCGs have some concepts that are kind of interesting that still haven't seeped into other games that much anymore, which is kind of cool.
But what's funny is through all those CCGs that we played, Spycraft and the Lord of the Rings and the World of Warcraft, Hecatomb from Wizards. I don't know if you ever saw that. It was a transparent cards that were shaped like pentagons.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
They were monsters you stack on each other to where you could see through them, and the powers would increase as you stack the monsters because you could see the numbers on the outside. We played so many, but in the end, the game that kicked it off, Magic in '93, is still the one that stands today.
Yeah, that is insane.
Take it down.
Yeah, Magic is so huge, and I mean, it's crazy what Richard Garfield had done with those initial designs from Magic. And I mean, it's not just the fact that, like, oh, it was the first, so it's the best. It just actually is that solid. And I mean, there's been a lot of people that have developed the game as it's gone along, but it's crazy how long Magic has stood the test of time.
And it's funny, even when I was playing those CCGs, and I said, well, I'm going to just try Magic and see what it is. I thought, man, this feels archaic. With all these really cool mechanics out there, it just feels, ugh. But now I go back, like I've played Magic the Gathering Arena, which is the digital version of the game. I'm like, you know what? It felt archaic at the time, but this is a solid game. It's just a solid game. With that simple thing of, like, I'm just going to put some mana into play, put some monsters out, and we're going to fight. And it to be almost 20, it's 20 years, what, 10, 20? My gosh, he's pushing 30 years old in 2023. Yes. Holy cow. For it to go that long and still be as popular as is just a testament to how good the game is.
And it's crazy the fact that, like, technically with that whole mana screw thing, which everybody's super annoyed about, it basically levels the playing field to where you could technically win a game if your opponent just gets a bad draw. I have watched Pro Tour games on Twitch where they're just sitting there with these, like, extremely expensive decks, top tier level, the highest competition in the game, and somebody's just like, didn't draw land, here go. You know, it's just like, oh man, like, it's so insane to be like, holy smokes, they're playing for thousands of dollars, and it's basically just, oh, well, okay.
And it's so funny that we brought this up because so next year will be the 20th year that the Lord of the Rings CCG came into existence. That was the game that kicked off me and Tony getting into this hobby. So I went on eBay while they're still available early this year, and I bought a sealed starter deck of like Gandalf and Frodo, who were the first two were.
From the very original stuff?
From the very original Fellowship of the Ring. I have them upstairs. They're sealed, and I got 2 booster packs. Next year, for 20th anniversary, Tony and I are going to sit down, open up those starter decks, read through the rules together, and play the game again like we did 20 years ago.
That's awesome. One of the crazy thing about the starter decks for that game too is that the starter decks themselves would come with random rares in it as well. It's like, hey, here's a few extra random rares.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that. Yep.
The only reason I remember is because I found a shop that had a ton of it, like, opened, and they were selling, like, the packs, and, like, they were selling a whole bunch of the starter decks, but all of them had been opened and the rares had been taken out of the starter decks. I'm like, I don't really care about that. I just want the sealed deck part. So I got, like, a few, like, shadow ones or whatever, which kind of changed it up, which was, like, after the whole 3-movie series had happened. So,
do you know what the first big card was from the first set?
Was it still like the Balrog sort of thing? Or
it was he was big, but Arwen.
Gotcha. I didn't play elves, so.
But it was a very powerful card. I remember it was like, $20-$30, and I'll never forget. I went to a card store near my house, and every once in a while I just buy a pack. And I bought a pack, and I was just sitting in the car, and I opened it, and inside was a foil Arwen, and tears almost came to my eyes because that was like the holy grail, was a foil Arwen, and I had one in I was just shaking. It's like, oh my gosh, this is worth a lot of money.
And you were still playing Riders of Rohan instead of elves. I don't know what you were doing wrong.
Well, no, this was before that even came out. This was Fellowship of the Ring, so Riders didn't exist then. But anyway, I was just so excited that I got a foil Arwen. Remember, they have foils of all of them. I bought a foil Belrog because I just thought it looked so cool.
Another thing that was interesting about that game is like, even though you wouldn't play like the Moria faction or whatever, everybody had like Balrogs in their deck. So when they got to the Moria side, it's like Balrog. Yeah, it's just like, oh no.
And but what's so cool is that from that, I never really got away from cards. And I know you and I are kind of in the same boat because CCGs. Tony and I got away from it because it was costly.
Sure.
It was like, I'm tired of chasing rares. And it's one of those things that the excitement of opening boosters just decreases the more boosters you buy, because then you're just dealing with duplicates. And then here comes Fantasy Flight with this thing called the LCG, the Living Card Game. And
I know you've tried like almost every single one of those, right?
Yeah, the only one that I never tried was the very first one, which was Game of Thrones. No, I didn't try two of them, sorry. Game of Thrones, and the reason why is because I was playing the Game of Thrones CCG, which I really enjoyed.
Gotcha, yeah.
And then they stopped making it and made the LCG. It's like, well, I'm not going to buy this again because I already have all these other cards. So I didn't do that one. I didn't do Call of Cthulhu.
Gotcha.
But what I did do was Warhammer Invasion, which was designed by Eric Lang. And he even says to this day that's still one of his favorite games. It's a really solid game. And then when Lord of the Rings, the card game came out, which is a co-op game, of course, Tony and I were like right into it, buying everything again.
It's crazy because that game is technically still going, right? Like, how long is that game going?
I believe somebody can fix me in the comments, but I think it was around 2011. Around that time that it came out, so it's pushing 10 years old. So it's crazy. The longest running LCG right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But then after that came Netrunner, and Netrunner
was good.
Yes, Netrunner might be, even though Lord of the Rings is more nostalgic, Netrunner might be a better game to me.
Oh, for sure.
Because the whole asymmetric thing of you're playing two totally different sides and they play totally differently. That was such a good game. I was so sad when they lost the license to that game and it went away.
Oh, for sure. I loved it. I wasn't able to keep up with it, and that's a game that's so like strategic, and like knowing all the cards and knowing how they play off of each other is so important that I just couldn't keep up with the flow of the game. And like I was sad that I wasn't able to play it enough, because it's one of those things where it's like, all right, a data pack came out and I bought it, and then I wasn't able to play the game, and then another one came out and I bought that and I built the decks a little bit but wasn't able to play the game. After a certain amount of these come out, then you're like, man, I'm so far behind in the meta, I haven't played the game enough, I'm just gonna get crushed by anybody I play.
Everything you just said ran through my mind the exact same way. For like a year, I knew all the cards. I was heavy into it.
Oh,
and
for
when
sure.
Somebody would say a card, I would know what it did. But like you, it was just like we were getting into board games and playing more board games, and those types of card games are lifestyle games, right? Where you kind of have to put a lot of energy into it, especially on the co-op. I mean, the competitive side, if it's a competitive game. And I like you, I couldn't keep up. And so I would build a deck and go play against somebody, and they knew what the new meta was, and it would just destroy me. And then it became no fun. Yeah. So I just totally
you kind of have to be on
the
same level, to be able to play that game properly, because it's extremely strategic, And
it's one of those things that I think that's why the co-op LCGs have such a longer life, because you can jump in at any time. We've just mentioned that Lord of the Rings has been around almost 10 years. Arkham Horror came out in 2016, and it is as strong as ever.
Oh, for sure.
And as far, I think I like it better than the Lord of the Rings as far as the mechanics. It's just a beautiful game. And then this past year, you got Marvel Champions, which is also riding high. So they got 3 co-op games that are super popular. But the nice thing is if you've never played Lord of the Rings, go buy a core set, sit down with a friend, and that's all you need.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to keep up with everything.
Yep, and the main thing is with that is just like there's no meta to really fight over, So it's just like, oh no, I can build a deck with whatever I have. Even if you're playing with somebody who's experienced in the game, you can have a core set and have like a worse deck and still try to work together through these different scenarios together. You might have to play an easier scenario than ones that come later, but it's just like there's no rush either to keep up. You can be like, okay, I beat that scenario, let me just buy the next pack, And you could be like 2 years behind and still just get one thing after you beat the next one, and you're fine. You're not having to be like it was in Netrunner, where it's like, oh man, everybody's so far past me, I could never catch up without buying the entire card pool because I need that one card in that one pack, because if I don't have that for my Wayland deck, my corporation's never going to make it happen, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this you do, I guess you still kind of run into the issue with the co-op game to where I stopped buying Lord of the Rings, so I'm way behind. There's probably really good cards out there I could use. But I got enough to where I could still make a deck, but I can't keep up with everything. And I hate it when it gets to the point when I can't. I was talking to a friend of mine. Marvel Champions is a game I've played probably every week since it was released. I'm fortunate to have a guy I work with that enjoys the game.
That's awesome.
We play together at least once a week. And right now, I'm in that same mode as Netrunner, like I know every card. Like if you like when he says I'm going to play this, I know what that does because I've been playing enough. But I know at some point in time, the number of cards are going to be beyond what I can keep up with in my head, and then I won't be able to keep up with it anymore.
Yeah, I actually decided, I'm like, Marvel Champions, I'm not going to slip on. I said that with all of them. But I'm like, I'm not going to slip on this game. I'm going to like get everything. I actually went and got the like Team Covenant subscription. So I'm like, I'm going to get the subscription. I'm going to get them mailed to me so that way I don't have any excuse. So they're automatically going to come in. And I've been trying to like review every single one of them for the channel. They've been hard to get a hold of for a bit, but I've been enjoying what I've played so far.
Gotcha. I know Black Widow and Captain America just came back in stock on FFG site.
Oh, cool.
For everybody that wants it. Have you tried Thor yet?
I did try Thor. Thor is interesting. Have you played it?
I played it for the first time this week, and I didn't. When I first saw it spoiled, I thought it's not going to be that good. And then I played it. I went, this is a great combo deck because
it can work.
Tons of cards you can combo off of pulling a minion to you, and when you do, you get to draw 2 cards, and you may have another card in play that when you kill a minion, you get to put a counter on it, which you can remove those counters to draw cards. It is good. I love combo decks.
I've played it solo, and it makes it a lot more difficult because he can't deal with thwart at all. I feel like it's really good when you change the deck up a little bit. If you play just the starter deck just as it comes, it's really hard to like solo stuff, especially if you play against a bad guy that doesn't have many minions, or somebody that like every single minion in the deck is really strong, because you pull a real strong minion out and you're just like, well, that might have been a mistake, you know. But yeah, I've been really enjoying it, and I'm so excited to like, I've done some deck building with Thor, but I'm excited to like build more and tweak more and change it up. But I love the fact that he can get a lot of really cool stuff out to like, he has a really low hand size, which this whole game is like discard your whole hand to like play these cool cards. So having a low hand size hurts you a lot, but he's got so many cards that you can build up to make it negate that, you know. So it's really
now
cool.
He does have a card that gives you +1 hand size.
Yes. And you got to get that on the table. I like Mulligan for that sort of stuff all the time. I'm like, I need something to make his hand size better immediately.
Exactly. So see, here we are. We're kind of in that zone where we know the game enough where we sit there and talk about it. I love that sort of thing. And that's what you get with lifestyle games, with like card games and miniature games too. When those games that you can walk away from the table, I mean, let me see if I can explain this better. So when I play a board game with my friends, rarely that after the board game we talk about it or I think much about it. I mean, we'll play a board game and we'll review it for the show and we'll talk about it and stuff like that. But it's not one of those things I may lay in bed and think about unless it's just an experience that blew me away. But like here, Marvel Champions, we're not playing the game, but we're talking, oh, wait a minute. You know what? If you take that card and you stick it in this, it's something that you can do when you're away from the table. Which is what's really cool about lifestyle games. And like miniatures, same thing. If you make a list, you know, new models come out. Oh, I can modify the list. But then with miniatures, there's the whole hobby of painting and everything too, which is something totally separate. Lifestyle games are so good, but they're so hard to keep up with. And with the way the format of our show is, is we're constantly talking about brand new games that it's hard for me to stay in a lifestyle type game.
Yeah, that's one of the things about just being a part of board game media that I don't know if like the average person out there feels the way that like me or you or any of our other media friends would feel about games, because like they can play a single game and it's cool. They can stick with that. They can play that with their friends for years, where when you're in board game media, it's like, well, I need to talk about this new thing or have this new thing come in so we can review it, so we can have extra content, so we can do this or that and create more things. And you have to constantly always be moving. Does that wear you out at all, or is it something that you're okay with?
No, it does wear me out. And in fact, over my shoulder over here is on the top shelf are the games that we need to check out. Mm-hmm. And with the current situation with the everybody being on lockdown,
sure.
I can't get to any of these things. So our show is really like, what are we going to talk about? I've been very fortunate that my family's been playing games with me and record a few segments with me here and there. But me and my co-host Tony can't get together to play. So now all these games are stacking up, and that's pressure. It's like really need. Well, you know it too. I really need to play these games, but then this sounds so haughty. I know people out there. Oh, poor Marty. He's
got too many games.
I don't mean to come off sounding like that.
Yeah.
But I do know that people like you said. There's a friend of mine who. For like 3 years straight, played nothing but Terraforming Mars. That was his game, and that's all he played. And it's tough when you're trying to make content, podcast or videos, to stick with the game, which is why...
You don't want to sound like Tony Topper with Blood Rage every single week. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Secret Cabal. Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, like they're going to listen to this. Which is
You're right.
Excuse me. Which is why I think... the content creators that make podcasts and videos on a lifestyle game have an easier job. And what I mean by that is, let's say, I'm sorry, I'm having too much Mountain Dew. I'm having to burp. I don't want to burp into the mic.
There's like a podcast called like Space Cats Peace Turtles where their entire podcast is just Twilight Imperium. The entire thing. They do strategy tips on Twilight Imperium. They do like they break down every single faction, and all they play is just Twilight Imperium. So it's interesting. There's podcasts that do that sort of thing.
But let's say Marvel Champions. I know that there's a podcast out there that focuses strictly on Marvel Champions.
Yeah.
The great thing about that is what every episode is going to be. It's going to be on this particular game. Right. You always have brand new content because as new cards come out, new decks come out, new meta comes out. That goes for any card game and any miniature game. Every episode you can talk about one game, but you still have new content each and every episode. Right. When you're doing something like a generic board game, you may talk about a worker placement game this time, a deck builder game next time, and they're not related at all. And you may find that, well, I like this particular type of thing better, but we're willing to go check this thing out too. Whereas that those that focus on one particular game, they can just be passionate about it and soak it all up and be super knowledgeable. And also it seems to me too, I don't know if you've noticed this, but on a lot of YouTube channels that focus on one thing, like miniatures and stuff, they tend to have a big audience. Because I used to think that, well, if that's too niche, if you just talk about one game, that's too niche. You can't build a community. But if you look on some of the top gaming channels, it's on Magic the Gathering. That's all they do is talk about one game, but there's so many people playing, and they don't want to hear about Etten or War of Whispers or anything else. No, they want to hear about Magic, and so they're searching for who makes Magic content. They do. So I want to go watch that.
Yeah, I think you have to have it has to be a big game like that though, because if the audience isn't that big, then you're going to kind of still be small. But I mean, I think you can still find solace in the fact that people are consuming your content and a lot of the Dice Tower content to help be informed and make a little bit of a decision. Oh, Marty played this game and he said it was like this, this, and this. That might help inform someone if it's a game that they feel like would work for them. So even though you're not super niche, or it might be hard to get all these different games to the table, there's people always wanting the new stuff because they want to know, how does it play? Was it actually good? Because I mean, we kind of do a little bit of it's strange to say, but a service to the community to help people make informed decisions. Whether we're wrong or right in our opinions, maybe they can get a taste of the game and know if it'll work for them.
Right. And is actually from that aspect where Tony and I, and this goes back to the very first thing we talked about, where early on we said, you know what? The show is about board games, but the content doesn't have to be 100% about board games.
Oh, yeah.
We just want to create something that's entertaining. From day one, I'd rather be more entertaining than informative, and that turns a lot of people off. A lot of people have, there's people that's given us negative feedback going, oh my gosh, you're talking about the 13 flavors of Mountain Dew, which we did last episode. I just want to hear about the game and what you think. But then a lot of people tell us, no, I come and listen to you guys because I just want to have a smile on my face. I just want a little bit of escape. And I just want to hear two friends who happen to like the same hobby I do just talk and banter and have a good time. So when we started getting that type of feedback, we said, you know what? We don't always have to talk about the brand new game, and we don't have to play 6 of the newest games and talk about them on the show. We'll handpick a few, and then let's just talk about the experiences around it. As we were playing this game, we tried this brand new snack, and this new snack was amazing, you know, or while we're sitting there and we're playing a game, we're talking about a new movie that we just watched, and we may bring it up on the show. So again, the central focus is board games, but it's just life and just trying to bring a smile to people's face and just have a good time. And if people tell me, I got a good laugh out of your show, I'd rather hear that than I think that's the best review I've ever heard on that board game.
Right.
Sort of deal.
And I think that's one of the things that, I mean, you can get information from anybody, but it means a lot more when it's like, no, I've been listening to these guys for 5 years. Like, I know what Tony likes. I know what Marty likes. I know where their taste aligns with mine. And I know they're like fun guys. And it's always interesting, like, when you have more of that like personality that shows out through banter and being goofy and like having fun doing it, it kind of like shows your passion for all sorts of different things and just makes people want to come back, not just for the board games, but for you guys, you know, which is pretty cool.
And I'm the same way. There's content creators out there that I'm drawn to because they're entertaining and getting away from the board game stuff. But I play a lot of video games, and there are a lot of video game reviewers out there. And the ones that I tend to like are the ones that are just look like they're having fun and they're entertaining. What they say, I'll listen to what they're saying is where they recommend a game or not. But if you can hold my attention for 10 to 12 minutes and make me smile and it's good editing and stuff like that, whether you liked it or not, it's not as big of a deal. But you gave me just a 12-minute, oh, that was very enjoyable. Thank you for doing that for me sort of thing. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do for the community also.
I think it's always interesting, like creating this content and the things that we make, and like you have tons of people that consume it and like listen to it, and they'll come up at a convention and they'll talk about the inside jokes and the things that you know, and it's cool because there's like friends out there that feel like they're like people out there that feel like they're like friends with you already. Like, oh man, I know Marty. I've listened to so many episodes. Like you might not know them yet, but like there's already like a kindred spirit or a bond that's already been built there before you even get to meet these people.
Yeah, and that is super nice. There's nothing that makes my day more than when we go to conventions and stuff and people come up, introduce themselves, and I've had we've had some really touching moments. A couple of years ago at Gen Con, we had a guy that came up to us and said, he didn't go into details, he just said he was going through a very rough time in his life. And he knew that every 2 weeks that he could, for an hour, just listen to us and just kind of put that stuff on the back burner for a little bit and just kind of smile and laugh. And I almost broke down in tears because it's like, that's exactly what I wanted to do for people. That's what I want to provide. It doesn't matter whether I like this latest game over here like that. I just want to, when people, by the time our show gets over, I want people to feel like, well, that wasn't a waste of time and I feel a little bit better now.
It's crazy. We've gotten so many emails and so many people. Like when all this stuff started happening, Tom was like, we are going to continue to make our content. We're going to continue to put stuff out there, and we're going to try to give people an escape and a reason to come back and a thing to look forward to. We started doing these like daily chats like every night and like having a place for people to come and like just escape for an hour and ask us some questions, do some different stuff. And we've had so much response being like, oh my goodness, like you guys are still there and there's a little bit of normal out there with all the stuff going on right now. And it's just cool to see. And it's like so humbling when people are like, oh man, like you've gotten me through a lot just listening to your content. And you're like, I'm just talking about board games and goofing off with my friends. It's pretty awesome that it can mean that much to people. And it's awesome because it's cool to meet these people as well. It's like they already know you from the content you've listened to. When you meet them in person or talk to them through email or whatever, it's like you get to meet all sorts of interesting people as well from all over the world. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of creators out there really doing some cool stuff right now. A lot of people, are playing games online and everything like that. Just trying to do stuff for people, and it's really cool during this time to see like a lot of people come together and do things for each other. Even outside the board game community, there's a lot of people out there raising money for a lot of different people that are going through really tough times right now. So, even though it's a really tough time in the world, sometimes you get to see the best. Well, sometimes you see the worst in humanity during these things too. But that has to do with me going to the local store and trying to get toilet paper. But that's different. but a lot of times you see the best in humanity too, and that's what you kind of look for nowadays.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's been awesome to like have this show and be able to talk to so many different personalities and get all sorts of different takes on it. It's just cool that there's so many different people in the industry that are passionate about sharing that love of board games.
And it's one of those things too that I remember, I guess the first Origins or Gen Con, I can't remember which one I went to, when I really fell in love with the community, when my son and I went to a demo a board game. And we sat down, and it was me, who was, older than my son, who was a teenager. And there was a young woman, probably in her 20s, over here, another guy over here who was a teenager. 4 or 5 totally different people who maybe away from the table would disagree on everything that you could ever talk about. But all these different people came to the table and had an enjoyable time just doing this one thing. And I went, holy cow, this is cool. Where so many different people of different lifestyles and different backgrounds could come together and just enjoy each other's company, where out on the street, you may disagree with everything that they've ever said or any beliefs that they have, but it doesn't matter here. When we're just sitting around and having a good time, that's what matters, is that we're humans. We're just enjoying each other's time together. And it was these little pieces of cardboard and little wooden bits that brought us together to be able to do that.
That's the cool thing about board games, is that they're a lot. I mean, we talked about TCGs and stuff like that, and a lot of times those things get super competitive. But the cool thing about board games, you can just throw it on a table, especially like cooperative games and things like that. You can throw them on a table and work together through a game, and like whether it's competitive, cooperative, whatever, you can just put everything aside, work together, and it kind of like builds upon itself, because there's so many people in the community that just want to come together to play more games with each other. And so they're inviting all sorts of different friends in, and their friend plays this game. Oh, I played this new game. Like, have you heard about it? And they share it with their friends, and it just keeps growing. Like, board games isn't anywhere near as big as like video games or stuff like that, but it's interesting to see how much it's grown even over like the time that we've been doing board game media stuff.
Oh my gosh, I know. Like I said, I've been doing this almost 8 years, and I remember the first time I went to Gen Con, there were 32,000 people there. And now it's pushing 70,000. So it's grown like crazy. And then, there used to be a couple hundred new board games a year. Now it's thousands of new board games a year. Whether it can sustain that, I don't know. We'll probably find out during this time when the economy cranks back up, if that's going to be able to sustain that pace or not. But for sure, it has grown. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on board games recently because people are looking for something to do.
Oh, for sure.
It's just that when I walked into Walmart and Target, it was the monopolies people were buying. I'm going, wait, let me tell you about this over here. There's Ticket to Ride right over here. There's Catan. There's Codenames. I've actually been an ambassador. It's like, oh, have y'all ever checked that out before? And they're like, who are you? And it's like, trust me, put the monopoly down. Put that up over. That's better.
I think we all, like, as like hardcore board gamers, see people perusing the board game section, and you're just kind of like, please pick up a good game, please. Like, I know your experience with that game is going to be drastically different than your experience with that game. Like, you pick up that one, you might never want to play board games again. You pick up that one, you might like fall in love and show all your friends and family. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, but I mean, 7-8 years ago, you didn't see the Ticket to Rides and Catans on Walmart and Target shelves, but now they're all over the place. Pandemic. I mean, all the evergreen titles are now you can find in Target and everything, which is really cool. And hopefully, people are actually trying them out.
You go to like a Barnes and Noble now, and it like looks like a game store. Like part of a Barnes and Noble is basically a game store, which is insane to me.
And I mean, some of the publishers are making Barnes & Noble specific titles. Games Workshop has released several titles that are only available in Barnes & Noble stores.
I know Target has a lot of exclusives too. I worked at Target for 10 years, and like when I first started, all they had was just mass market games. And now like that section of like hobby games, that we would call them, just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. It's kind of interesting.
Well, and it's like the, I mentioned the Harry Potter strike that's coming out. It's going to be going to Target. Isaac Childress is going to release a new version of Gloomhaven. That's a smaller box version that's going to be, out in Target and everything like that too. So there's some these really popular games are starting now to be repackaged and recreated so that they can be going to a Target shelf, be under $40, and not be so overly complicated.
I actually saw a copy of Gloomhaven. There's a Think Geek store here in the mall in Miami. I mean, there's not a whole lot of malls around America anymore, but they have a Think Geek store in this one, and they have just straight up Gloomhaven there. I'm like, who's walking into the mall and walking out with Gloomhaven? That is crazy.
How much? What's the retail on that in there? Is 100?
It was a lot. It was not a little bit. It was at least 150 plus. So
wow. I mean, well, yeah, I don't see anybody just walking off the street not knowing anything about it. I don't want to spend $150 on that right there.
But it's been so interesting, too, because people will be like, what's the number one board game? And they find this Board Game Geek website, and they're like, oh, Gloomhaven, let's do it. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of game in that box.
Oh, for sure. That's a whole lifestyle game in itself, speaking of lifestyle games. I mean, if somebody's like hardcore, I mean, they could end up taking it home and playing it with their friends for a long time.
That's a very good point. There are some games that are campaign style that you can just get into and put a lot of hours into. And that's probably number one. Hey, do you like Diablo or dungeon crawlers? Then you might want to check this out because you can spend hundreds of hours in this one particular board game and feel like you're playing in a dungeon crawl.
So we talked a lot about trading card games. As far as like the board game genre goes, what would you say is like your favorite type of board games?
I still love deck building games. I love when people, designers can take the deck building mechanic and do something really cool with it. So when Dominion first came out, which I guess was the first deck building game, I was like, this is really cool. But then you had so many copycats just kind of doing the same thing. Yeah. And then Thunderstone came out from Alderac, which I thought, okay, this is a little different because it had the dungeon crawl feel to it, where you could build a deck and take adventures and kill monsters. But then, man, people just got really smart. The Tyrants of Underdark. I thought, holy cow, this is a area control game that's driven by deck building. And then one of my favorite games from last year, Undaunted Normandy. Oh my gosh, from David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. What an incredible design. A whole deck building game, but the cards that you play are moving units on a board and you're playing a war game. I'm like, this is incredible. That's crazy. Where the cards that you play are activating the units and the cards are actually their life, their HP. If all those cards are going out of your deck, that unit can't be used anymore. It's a brilliant idea, and I'm so glad that it's gotten so much buzz because they're going to be coming out with an Undaunted North Africa. And if that goes well, I'm sure there'll be some others down the line. So I love the deck building mechanic, but especially how people are doing cool things with Clank.
Have you played Clank Legacy? That's what I was about to ask.
I have not. Tony has Clank Legacy, and he says
I feel like you would love that game because it takes Clank and then adds this crazy zany story from Penny Arcade, and it's not like a normal Legacy game where like, okay, you play a couple games and you unlock a thing, you play a couple games and you unlock a thing. No, like you constantly unlock things the entire time, and it's got the whole like near and far story of like you go to the space and you open up a book and you have these different choices to make, and there's so much good story in that game and so many cards to unlock and so many things to discover that it was just it was my number one game of last year. I enjoyed it so much.
Wow. So maybe I need to get it back from Tony. We got a copy and he said he's going to play it with his wife, and maybe I'll go steal it off his shelf or something like that.
You should. I bet your family, you could get together and make that thing happen.
Yeah, that's cool. I've heard a lot of good things about that. Yeah, but Clank's another one of those. It's kind of an ingenious way to use the deck building mechanic. I like so many different types of mechanics. I really consider myself an omni gamer. I'll play anything, worker placement, thematic. I love Arkham Horror. I love heavier Euros. Like one of my favorite Euros from last year was City of the Big Shoulders, which is a really heavy Euro game. I will play literally anything except maybe Small World. Not a fan of Small World.
You don't like deterministic area control?
No. I had a bad experience. The first time I played Small World was probably 2010, 2011. I had a bad experience. And then I tried it again, and the experience didn't get any better. So it's so funny. For years, I avoided area control like the plague because I do not like that style of game. But over the years, there's been some really good ones I've played. So I do play those now, too.
Do you think that there's an underrated game that you really like that you would want to like champion that people might not talk about as much?
Oh, see, I told you before we got on tonight, if you're going to have any questions like that, to give them to me beforehand. So
I was just thinking about like my favorite game of last year was like Legacy. I was like, I wonder if Marty has a really cool game that like he really likes a lot, but people don't talk about enough.
Oh my God! See, I'm looking over to my right because that's where another one of my game shelves is. But the light's off, so I can't really see it that well. Let's see. A recent game that I played that I'm sorry, this is not good to look away from the camera, but I'm going to real quick. Trying to see if there's anything behind me. It seems like everything that I've played is I think it's popular though.
See, you're just cult of the popular and cult of the new. Come on, you gotta get those niche games in there.
I know. I gotta find that. No. I don't.
I broke Marty.
I said Undaunted, but that's actually a popular game.
Oh yeah. People have been really talking about that a lot.
Yeah. The same designers also did War Chest.
Oh yeah.
Which is really, really good.
Didn't Steven Spang help design that? No, I'm just kidding. Inside jokes. Speaking about inside jokes.
Yeah. So if one pops in my head, I'll tell you real quick. But one that's underrated that not a lot of people know about. No, it's not coming to head.
So I see you have Unmatched in the back. Have you been playing a lot of Unmatched?
Not a lot. I've played some, but you know what I end up playing more is it's behind my head, Funkoverse.
Oh really?
Yeah. So right here, I love that system. I think that is when I first heard that they were coming out with a board game with Funkos. I went, oh my gosh, this is good.
And then you heard they were coming out with Golden Girls.
Yeah,
and you're like, I'm in.
It's like, this is going to be so bad. This is just a cash grab. And then I played it, and I was like, oh, this is good. Because I love games where you have this idea of I have an ability to use, but then there's like a cooldown period afterwards. Oh, yeah. I used to play another CCG I played was called City of Heroes, which is based off the MMO. And they had that concept, too, of when you used an ability, you had to tilt the card either 90 or 180 degrees. And at the end of your turn, it would rotate back. And as soon as it was back up again, you could use it again. So it was like a timer. And that's what I feel like Funkoverse has, too. You use the ability, and then you put a token on the track, and then each turn it moves down. And then when it gets back off the track, you can use that ability again. I love timing games like that. I think that is a really, really cool mechanic. And I mean, Unmatched is good too, but that timing mechanics in Funkoverse I just think is really good. And so it really surprised me. I thought this ain't going to be any good. It's like, no, that's pretty good.
It's crazy because they're not going to slow down with Funkoverse stuff at all. Like I saw like recently that people were talking about they're going to have like Nightmare Before Christmas stuff and like all sorts of insane stuff coming out for that game.
Look how many Funko things they make. I mean, the world is their oyster. Yeah, that's the right term. The pearl is their oyster. Their pearl is in the oyster. No, the world is their oyster. Yeah, so they could do anything they want. I mean, they just came out with Jaws. with the
Kool-Aid Man.
The shark food. Yeah, Kool-Aid Man. Come on. It's like, I got to get Kool-Aid Man. So, I mean, they could just open it up and from anything from totally ridiculous to, and it's like Golden Girls versus Batman. Sure. Okay. Let's do that.
Make Batman hold a purse and start whacking people with it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, as long as they keep coming up with really new, cool actions for all the figures to do, it's going to go quite a ways. And I would think that's super popular because Funkos are so popular. I'm not really sure. I assume it's doing well.
Yeah, I think the fact that they're making so many of them and it's kind of interesting because they're like putting like exclusive miniatures in all sorts of different places. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, okay, Target has these exclusives over here. This company has that exclusive over there. So it's kind of interesting where they're like making you go around to get these different Funkos all over the place. But most of them are like starter sets. So you can just grab one and just play whatever,
And isn't the Kool-Aid Man in Target?
Yeah, I think it's an exclusive. So...
Yeah. So, yeah, I've got to run by Target and get one of those. Hopefully that one, it's probably sold out now because it's like people are like, I don't know what that is, but I want it. Along with the Monopoly copy that they just bought. They bought Monopoly and the Kool-Aid Man Funko Pop probably.
I wonder if they're going to have a Monopoly Man Funko Pop in the Funkoverse game. You get to beat up the Monopoly Man.
I'd play that. That sounds actually pretty cool.
If you had like one character like from all of these IPs that you could add into Funkoverse, what would it be?
Buffy. Now that's interesting because Unmatched is coming out.
It's supposed to actually have Buffy. Yeah.
So I'm excited about when Buffy comes out to Unmatched. But yeah, Firefly would be fun.
Oh yeah.
Have each of the characters a Firefly in that one. Of course, they can do any superhero they want. I think that would be interesting. The off the wall ones like the Kool-Aid Man. It's like I never in a million years would have thought. They're sitting around the design table. What can we do? What about Kool-Aid Man? Yes. So
we did like a whole video series on like Funkoverse versus Unmatched, and I was on Team Unmatched just because like I love the simplicity of that system. I like Star Wars Epic Duels, and this takes like the whole card thing. It just makes it so like clean. Like that is a clean game, and I love the line of sight mechanic in it where it's like if you're on these color circles you can shoot at those color circles. You know, it makes it kind of extremely simple and easy to play. Funkoverse is just off the walls.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll tell you, I love the art in Unmatched too. And I know in the original sets Oliver Barrett from Mondo Games did the art for it, and it's just an amazing job. And he's done art for a few albums too.
Really?
My son's really into Castlevania, and he bought the Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Was that the one soundtrack? Is either that or Reign of Blood? No, I can't think of it. Reign of Kendo. Sheesh. Anyway, never mind. Blood of Rondo. Blood of Rondo. Marty, get to the point. Oliver Barrett did the art for one of those album covers. I'm sitting there staring at it right now, and it's an amazing job. So now anything that he does, I want. So
That's awesome.
There's a few album covers he did for Mondo, which is like video game soundtracks.
Oh, nice.
It's just really cool. So he's an amazing artist.
I'm really excited to see the next big box set for Unmatched is like the Cobble and Fog thing. I'm really excited to see those characters and all the art from that with like all the Dracula and the Invisible Man and all that stuff. It'll be really cool to see how that all comes together.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually talked to Rob Davio and Justin Jacobson, who works for Restoration Games, and I said, Castlevania, I'd love to see that. I said, they've got the Castlevania license. It'd be cool if you came out with some Castlevania figures and had, all the characters.
They're like, we're coming out with Dracula. What do you want?
Yeah, well, that's true.
You want Simon.
Simon Belmont. And, you got the cartoon or animation going on right now on Netflix. So Castlevania's kind of big. So you can come out with it. It would be pretty hot. Have Alucard and, Simon, et cetera. That would, what was her name? Scott. I can't think of the female character's name. But anyway, it would be cool to have little figures of those too.
That's awesome. Well, we are over our time, so I guess we will end up wrapping this thing up. But
we have to wrap. See, you did not tell me this stuff. You should tell me that right off the bat.
I should have had a checklist for wrapping.
I've been dropping some rhymes. Is that what it's called? Dropping? I don't know. Marty, stop trying to be hip, okay?
Anyway, if people are interested in any of the content you make, where can they find that stuff, or where can they get into contact with you around the internet?
If they've actually listened to this entire show and they're still somehow interested in finding us, all right, it's your loss. So you can go to our website at rolldicetakenames.com. That's where our website is. But for the podcast, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spotify, any of the major podcast storage places except SoundCloud. We're out there, so you can find us there. Just look for Rolling Dice and Taking Names. And our social media, we have Twitter's Dyson Names and Instagram is Dyson Names. Got a Facebook page, and our guild, BGG Guild's 1589. And we always do some really fun polls out there. They're never about board games. Like our most recent poll was, what's your favorite flavor of Mountain Dew of the 13 that are currently out right now or whatever like that? So we always have fun doing stuff like that. So
I thought your Twitter was used exclusively for making fun of Rodney Smith. Is that like...
It does tend to run that way, but he's just good fodder for that stuff. He just opens himself up for things like that. But Rodney and I people probably think, why are you picking on this guy? Rodney and I are super good friends.
Oh, yeah,
we have been for years. Literally, we talk to each other every single day. So, I mean, we have for years. But it's kind of like we're just fun that we have on the outside. And peek behind the curtain, Rodney actually told me about his April Fool's gag that he was going to be doing, and he gave me enough heads up so that I could have something prepared right after it. So that was kind of a coordinated effort. It wasn't just haphazard.
No, I thought your acting in the whole live thing was really good, Marty. It was great acting.
Well, to be honest, that was the first time I watched it. So that was legit.
But you knew he was just reading the rule book.
I did know he was just reading the rule book.
You're like, what? So, yeah. Is he just reading the rule book? I'm like, you're literally like 15 minutes in at this point, Marty. You know he's just reading the rule book. Come on.
Well, I had to carry it on a little bit before I gave into the fact. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he wasn't reading the rule book. But Roy, this has been fantastic, man. So people probably know that Roy used to live up in North Carolina, and we used to get together and play games and stuff. I mean, you and I played a lot of Ashes together, and we kind of connected through LCGs and stuff like that.
I used to always be like, North Carolina represent, but then some Tom Bassel guy got me moved down to Homestead, Florida, and took me out of the North Carolina gang.
Well, it's a lot warmer down there. So, hey, guess what? I mean, I know we got to go, but it would be cool if Plaid Hat, who's now on their own again, they're bringing back Summoner Wars. And Colby kind of dropped, hey, if Summoner Wars does well, maybe we'll revisit the Ashes universe.
That would be awesome. It's been cool to see that company in general, like how they're mixing things up. Like, he's even talked about like maybe doing a subscription model for Summoner Wars. I'm like, I'm in. Like if he starts like making these card games like that, and then like finding a core community and then making those games like and pushing them out consistently, it'll be really cool to see where that company goes.
Yeah, and if he does stuff like that, then he can have a little bit tighter control over Ashes. And like you said, you build the core community, because that, I think with all the stuff that went on with Plaid Hats, why Ashes kind of fell off.
They got sold. That game came out, and then they got like sold twice. Like, what are they going to do? And
so there was no tournament support, and then it went months without anything released. And you know as well as I do, when you're doing a competitive card game, you've got to have the community behind it. It's just going to die off, and people will find other stuff, and they did.
Awesome, man. We're going to stay here and talk for another hour. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Awesome, everybody. Thanks so much for coming on, Marty. It's been a ton of fun, and hopefully I'll get to see you around at some point. I'm sure I'll see you at a convention whenever those happen again. But
could be 2021, whenever they pick those things up again. Yeah.
Keep it happening, and I guess I'll see everybody on the next one. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.